That night still lingers in my mind, a mix of confusion, humiliation, and bitterness. I'd been at the bar, hoping to impress her, feeling like I might finally be getting somewhere. I'd gone to get drinks, trying to seem confident, relaxed, and generous. But what I returned to was a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. How do I get rid of him, Sophia? I don't want to be rude, but I really can't stand him. Her voice was clear, sharp. It sliced through the ambient noise of the bar and hit me harder than any insult ever had. I froze mid-step, the tray of drinks tilting slightly in my hand. "Just leave," Sophia replied casually. Her tone was so dismissive, like I wasn't even worth the effort of a proper goodbye. "You want to get drinks? Sneaking out is easy." The blonde hesitated, her long legs shifting in those ridiculously high heels that I had spent the night complimenting. "I can't treat him like that," she said, as if she was doing me a favor. "He's not terrible, he's just not my type." I stood there, unable to move, unsure if I should step forward or turn back. That's when he entered the picture. Ethan. He sauntered over, all confidence and charm, like he owned the place. "Hello, ladies," he said smoothly, leaning into their conversation like he belonged there. "Need some assistance?" Her tone changed instantly. Defensive. "I don't have a boyfriend. What's it to you anyway?" But before I could process what was happening, Ethan saw me coming back. His eyes flicked to the tray I was carrying, and he seized the moment. "Oh, perfect timing. These drinks are for my sister and her friend," he said, plucking the beer I'd bought for her off the tray as if it were his. I stood there, dumbfounded. "Your sister?" "Yeah," Ethan replied with that same infuriating smirk. "I came to take her home. She promised Mom she'd be back early." He winked at her, and somehow they both just went along with it. And then Sophia, who had been cool and detached with me all night, actually asked to join them. "Mind if I tag along?" she said, like I didn't even exist. I watched them leave, the drinks I'd bought in their hands. Ethan stopped briefly, slipping a bill into mine. "See that redhead at the bar? Buy her a vodka tonic and tell her you're Ethan's friend. She won't say no." He winked like he'd done me some kind of favor. I didn't know whether to throw the money in his face or just leave. In the end, I did neither. Instead, I stood there, watching them pile into his flashy Jaguar, their laughter fading into the night. I don't know why I stayed at the bar after that. Maybe I didn't want to go home and admit to myself how pathetic I felt. Maybe I thought I'd find someone to salvage the evening. Instead, I found myself spiraling, replaying every moment of the night. The way she laughed at his jokes but barely responded to mine. The way she smiled when he walked up, something she hadn't done for me all night. A week later, I heard more about that night than I wanted to. Word gets around, especially when people like Ethan are involved. He didn't just leave with them. He made a whole night of it. Drinks, dancing, even a kiss at Sophia's doorstep. And then he went home with the blonde. Amelia, I think her name was. It wasn't just a blow to my ego. It was a gut punch to my trust. I had bought into her kindness, her politeness, thinking it meant she saw something in me. But she didn't. To her, I was just the guy who bought the drinks while she waited for someone better to show up. And Ethan was that better someone. Or at least he thought he was. He swooped in, stole the spotlight, and turned the night into his own personal victory lap. And the worst part? Everyone played along like I wasn't even there. It wasn't just a bad night. It was a wake-up call. I'd been blind to what was happening right in front of me. And while they were off laughing and enjoying the thrill of their little game, I was left holding the bill, literally and figuratively. I'm not sure what stung more, losing her to him, or realizing I'd never really had her to begin with. When I first met her, it felt like I'd stumbled into something rare, something I couldn't have planned for even if I tried. Amelia, elegant, reserved, with a hint of mystery. I remember thinking she was leagues out of mine, but somehow we clicked. That night at the bar, I thought I was the one doing the chasing. Turns out, she let me think that. It wasn't until much later that I realized she always had the upper hand. It wasn't instant fireworks between us. No dramatic passion or whirlwind romance. Things progressed slowly, methodically. Amelia had been burned before, or so she said. "I haven't had a boyfriend in a long time," she admitted during one of our first proper conversations. "A couple of flings at university, But then I went to Africa. Everything changed after that. What happened? I'd asked, genuinely curious. Her expression tightened. I don't want to talk about it, she replied sharply before hinting, later that evening, that the people who set the rules don't always follow them in their personal lives. It was cryptic, but I didn't press. I respected her boundaries, or at least I thought I did. Amelia had a way of shutting you down while making it seem like she was opening up. When I joked about where the night might end, she smiled at me knowingly and said, "I hope you don't think you'll end up in my bed tonight." I wasn't thinking that at all, I replied, feigning innocence. But since you brought it up, don't bother finishing that sentence, she cut me off. You don't stand a chance. Yet, 10 months later, I was sitting across from her, staring at the woman who had agreed to be my wife. It hadn't been a smooth road to get there, but I truly believed we were building something strong, something lasting. Our families adored each other. Amelia's parents were ecstatic that their eldest daughter had found someone reliable. My parents couldn't stop singing her praises. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally doing something right. Even planning the wedding had been smooth. Almost too smooth. Neither of us was religious, but Amelia insisted on a traditional church ceremony. For the sake of tradition, she'd said. I didn't object. I just wanted to be with her. Whatever made her happy. On the eve of the wedding, following tradition, Amelia packed a bag and went to stay with Sophia, her best friend and maid of honor. As she was leaving, I joked, "Behave yourself, darling. I know you've got that modest little bachelorette party planned." "What do you think, old fool?" she teased, smiling over her shoulder. "We're just going to a regular pub, not a strip club." "You know," I said, chuckling as I handed her coat, "that's how I met you, at a pub. Plenty of guys there wouldn't mind chatting with someone like you." She didn't laugh like I expected. Instead, her tone shifted, almost serious. "Well, that won't happen anymore, right, Tom? No more guys flirting with me?" I frowned, unsure where this was coming from. "Do you want other men to talk to you, Amelia?" I asked cautiously. "No, of course not," she replied quickly. "I'm just being silly, Tom. Pay no attention." But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. "Are you sure you want to marry me?" I asked, taking her hand and pulling her closer. "You haven't changed your mind, have you?" "Of course not, darling." She smiled, leaning in to kiss me. "I'm just carried away by emotions, behaving foolishly." With that, she picked up her bag and walked out the door, tossing a cheerful, "See you tomorrow at the church," over her shoulder. "I love you," I called after her, more to reassure myself than her. Later that night, I met up with the guys at the pub for a pint. It was a good evening, filled with laughter and talk about Arsenal's recent victory over Chelsea. By the time I got home, I'd almost forgotten about that strange moment with Amelia. I was ready to wind down, make some tea, and get a good night's sleep before the big day. But then the phone rang. "Tom Stevenson speaking." I answered, already tired. "Thank goodness you're finally home," came Sophia's voice on the other end, sharp with urgency. This is the third time I've called. Something in her tone set me on edge. "What's wrong? Is everything okay with Amelia?" "She's fine," Sophia replied quickly. "But you'd better come here. Now." "What's happened?" I demanded, my heart pounding. "Was there an accident?" "No," Sophia said, hesitating. "Not an accident. But you need to come and sort this out with Amelia, if you still want to get married in the morning." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Sort things out with Amelia?" I repeated, my throat dry. "What's going on? What happened at her bachelorette party?" Sophia didn't answer. "Just come, Tom. I'll explain everything when you get here." I hung up and bolted out the door, my mind racing. What had Amelia done? Or worse, who had she done it with? Every worst-case scenario played out in my head as I sped towards Sophia's house, the car's engine roaring in protest as I pushed it harder than I should. I had thought tonight was the start of the rest of my life. Now I wasn't so sure. I drove to Sophia's small apartment, the night air heavy and suffocating. My thoughts raced faster than the car, each scenario worse than the last. What had happened? Was Amelia okay? Had she done something I wouldn't be able to forgive? The questions swirled relentlessly, each one more nauseating than the last. When Sophia opened the door, I didn't waste a second. "Where's Amelia? Is she all right? What happened?" The words poured out of me like a flood. But instead of answering, Sophia handed me a cup of tea, her silence more unnerving than any explanation. I sipped automatically, my throat dry, waiting for the blow. "She's fine, Tom," Sophia finally said, her voice calm yet heavy. "She's in my bedroom crying." My heart dropped. "Oh God, no," I muttered, dreading her next words. "Tell me honestly, Sophia, how bad is it? Well, what did she do?" "It's not about what she did, Tom," Sophia said quietly, her gaze steady but unreadable. "It's about what she didn't do." I stared at her, completely lost. "I don't understand. Please, just tell me. I'm sure I can forgive her." Sophia sighed deeply, as if bracing herself. "Ever since we got to the pub, guys were hitting on us left and right. 8 well-dressed women together. It's like we were a magnet for attention. They probably thought we were all drunk." "So, what did Amelia do?" I pressed, desperate for clarity. Sophia shook her head. "It wasn't Amelia. It was all of us, except June and Tina." "June and Tina?" I repeated blankly. "What does that have to do with anything?" "They're married," she explained, her tone sharper now, "and they don't flirt with other men." I stared at her, completely bewildered. It still wasn't making sense. "Tom," Sophia said, louder this time, as if speaking to a child, "we all flirted with those guys. We had fun. We danced. We kissed. June and Tina didn't, but everyone else did. Everyone but Amelia." I blinked, still unable to wrap my head around it. "So, what's the problem, Sophia? I don't get it. Amelia didn't do anything wrong." Sophia rolled her eyes in frustration. "That's exactly the problem, Tom. She didn't do anything. She just sat there, refusing to dance, refusing to flirt, refusing to let herself experience it." I still didn't see the issue. She didn't want to flirt. "She's engaged to me," I said firmly. "Oh, Tom," Sophia said, almost pityingly, "you men are so foolish. Can't you see? The rest of us had a great time. We flirted, we kissed. Hell, I even let one guy touch me on the dance floor just for fun. Mar and Judy, they went out to the parking lot with 2 of the guys. But Amelia? She sat there, stiff as a board. And why? Because you're the first real man she's ever dated. And now it's hitting her. She's realizing she'll never know what it's like to cheat." Her words hit me like a brick to the stomach. "That's ridiculous," I said weakly. But the knot in my chest told me it wasn't. What if Sophia was right? What if Amelia was genuinely questioning what she was giving up? We talked for a little while longer. Sophia gave me more details about the night, explaining Amelia's quiet sadness, the weight of her realization. Finally, I mustered the courage to open the bedroom door. Amelia was curled up on the bed, her face buried in a pillow. She looked so small, so fragile. "Amelia?" I asked cautiously. "Are you okay?" Her head snapped up, her eyes red and puffy. "What are you doing here, Tom?" "Just leave." "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly, stepping closer. "We need to sort this out." "There's nothing to sort out," she murmured into her pillow. "I can't go through with this. I'm so sorry." I sat down on the bed and gently stroked her hair. For a fleeting moment, I thought about walking away, about leaving this problem behind and saving myself the heartache. But as I looked at her, I realized how deeply I loved her, how much I wanted her in my life. We sat like that for what felt like hours. Finally, Amelia sat up and threw her arms around me. "I love you," she whispered. "Then what's the problem?" I asked gently. "We love each other. Let's get married." She hesitated, biting her lip. "It's just you're the only man I've ever been with. And what if, one day, I want to know what it's like to be with someone else?" Her words crushed me, but I tried not to show it. "Are you saying you want to sleep with someone else?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked away, ashamed. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's just a fear I can't shake." The next day, over beers at the bar, she brought it up again. "Tom," she said nervously, "what if one day I want to know what it's like to be with another man?" I kissed her cheek, trying to keep the mood light. "Is that your only concern, darling?" I teased. "No," she admitted, "but it's one of them." Without thinking, I blurted out, "You know what? As a wedding gift, I'll give you a get-out-of-jail-free card. One time, if you want to sleep with someone else, I'll forgive you." Her face twisted in horror. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I replied, trying to hide the sinking feeling in my chest. Just once, then it's out of your system, and we can move on. Tom, she began, but I interrupted her, pulling her closer. I'll love you for a lifetime, I whispered, and I'll make you so happy you'll never want another man. She didn't respond, and for the first time, I wondered if I just made the biggest mistake of my life. The day after our conversation at Sophia's apartment, Amelia and I got married as planned. The ceremony was beautiful, and our lives together unfolded with all the joy I'd ever imagined. Over the years, we built a happy life. 2 wonderful children, a home full of laughter, love, and understanding. Sometimes, as a joke, Amelia would bring up that absurd promise I'd made her, the get-out-of-jail-free card. I'd laugh it off, confident it would never come to anything. Over time, the subject faded into the background, nothing more than a fleeting memory. But 10 years later, that promise came back to haunt me. It was during a friend's anniversary party. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and couples filled the dance floor. I sat at the bar, nursing my drink and watching the crowd. Amelia had been dancing for a while, which wasn't unusual. But what struck me as odd was the man she was dancing with, and the fact that she hadn't returned after 2 or 3 songs, as she usually did. Instead, she stayed with him, song after song, half an hour passing like a slow drip of unease in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The way she moved with him, the way she laughed, it wasn't the Amelia I knew. When the music stopped, I expected her to come back to me. She didn't. That knot of unease tightened into something heavier. For the first time in 10 years of marriage, I felt the sharp sting of jealousy. Amelia was never a conventional beauty, but she had a way of drawing attention. Charming, with a quick wit and those impossibly long legs, she could pull off short skirts even at 39. And this man, this stranger, was the complete opposite of me. Tall, blonde, lean. What could she possibly see in him? The question gnawed at me until I couldn't sit still any longer. Muttering something about the restroom, I got up and began searching for her. It didn't take long. In a shadowed corner of the dance floor, I found them. They weren't dancing anymore. They weren't even talking. Amelia was leaning against him, her head resting on his chest, his arms around her like they belonged there. My heart stopped. I froze, watching as she chuckled at something he said. She reached up and brushed his cheek with her hand. That simple, intimate gesture cut me deeper than anything else. "Hello, Amelia," I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice as I approached them. "I've been looking for you. Where have you been?" She jumped slightly, pulling away from the man. "What?" she asked, blinking at me like she hadn't even noticed my presence. "You've been gone for nearly an hour," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's going on?" "Oh, Tom," she sighed, sounding more annoyed than guilty. "This is Dave. We were just dancing and chatting. That's all. Too long," I replied firmly, holding out my hand. "Let's go." For a moment, I thought she might refuse. I didn't know what I'd do if she did. Hit him? Shout? Walk away? But after a tense pause, she finally reached out to take my hand. "May I finish the last dance, darling?" she asked softly, almost pleading. "The music already ended, Amelia," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "It stopped several minutes ago." She looked confused, flustered. "All right," she mumbled. "Of course. I'll just say goodbye to Dave." "No farewells," I snapped. "We're leaving. Now." "Wait a second, buddy," Dave began, stepping forward, but one look at me made him reconsider. He backed off, muttering something under his breath. "Now, Amelia," I repeated, my voice low and firm. "All right," she said reluctantly, letting go of Dave's hands. "Goodbye, Dave. We'll see each other again sometime." Those words, "we'll see each other again," were like fuel to the fire already burning inside me. I grabbed her arm and practically dragged her back to the bar. "What the hell were you doing, Amelia?" I hissed, barely able to contain my anger. "Who is that guy? What were you thinking?" "Nothing," she protested, her voice defensive. "It was nothing, Tom. We were just dancing. That's all." "Dancing?" I spat. "You were pressed against him, stroking his face, laughing like you were on a date. And now you're telling me it was nothing." Her eyes flicked away, avoiding mine. She always looked me in the eye when we talked, except tonight. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "We need to talk, Tom." "Fine," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "Let's talk. Right here. Right now." "Not here," she insisted. "Let's go home. We'll talk when we're alone." "No," I said, my voice rising. "If there's something to say it now. I'm not leaving until you do." She hesitated, her expression shifting to something I couldn't quite read. Then she nodded. "Fine, but you have to promise to listen to me. All the way to the end." "I'll listen," I said, though my stomach churned with dread. "Go on." She took a deep breath. "This isn't sudden, Tom. I've been thinking about it for a while now. Over a month. And I've made up my mind." "Made up your mind about what?" I demanded, though a part of me already knew where this was going. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and determination. "I've decided to make use of the promise you made me." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words hung in the air, suffocating me. That stupid, thoughtless promise I'd made a decade ago, thinking it would never come to this. And now here we were. "You're serious," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "I'm serious." And in that moment, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. "What promise?" I snapped, my voice trembling as the words escaped me. "What the hell are you talking about, Amelia? I never promised you anything like this." Her expression softened, but it didn't ease the knot of dread in my stomach. "The night before our wedding," she said gently, "you made me a promise, Tom, and now the time has come to honor it." I froze, the room spinning around me. I wanted to deny it, to shout that she was wrong, but deep down I knew she was right. I had made that promise, though I'd long since pushed it out of my mind. I had dismissed it as a foolish moment, a joke, nothing more. But to her, it had meant something. Now it loomed over us like a storm cloud. "I don't remember any promise," I mumbled, though my voice faltered. "And God, how I lied. I did remember. Every word of it." "I believe you do," she said softly, avoiding my eyes. "I'm sorry, Tom. I don't want to hurt you. I love you. But I'm turning soon. And no matter how much I love you, this feeling has been building for years. It won't go away." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt her tug on my arm, leading me away from the dance floor. My body followed, but my mind rebelled, caught in a whirlwind of disbelief and anger. "What's happening to us, Amelia?" I managed to whisper as she guided me toward the car. "Everything will be fine, my love," she said softly, as if that could make it true. "We'll figure it out at home." The ride was silent, the tension unbearable. When we stepped through the door, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Damn it, Amelia, stop apologizing," I exploded, pacing the room like a caged animal. "I can't help it," she said, her voice trembling. "To hell with everything." I shouted, "I'm going to bed. Do what you want." I stormed upstairs, slamming the door behind me. Lying awake in the dark, I replayed everything she'd said. Her quiet resolve, her guilt, the certainty in her voice. Amelia, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was standing on the brink of betrayal. And the worst part was, she believed she was being honest. She believed this was a way forward for us. The next morning, I stumbled downstairs after a sleepless night. The smell of bacon greeted me, a full English breakfast spread neatly on the table. It was her way of softening the blow. I knew it immediately. "Where are the kids?" I asked, noticing the unusual quiet in the house. "They went out with Ted and Andrea," Amelia replied, her voice carefully measured. "They'll be gone all day." I looked at her, my stomach churning. "You planned this, didn't you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't want to. I just didn't know how else to do this." I stared at her, the woman I had built my life with, and felt an anger so deep it scared me. "What do you expect me to do now, Amelia?" I said bitterly. "You say you love me, but here you are, planning to betray me. How the hell do you make that make sense?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to hurt you, Tom, but I haven't changed my mind. I have to do this. I love you, and I want to make it as easy as I can for you. I laughed bitterly. Easy? How exactly do you plan to make this easier for me? Do you want me to watch? To my shock, she nodded. If you want, Tom. I know some men like that. What the hell are you talking about? I snapped, horrified. Do you think I want to see you with someone else? Jesus, Amelia. The thought alone makes me sick. I'm sorry, she said again, her voice small. I just thought maybe... I shouted, cutting her off. There's no maybe here. I don't want this, Amelia. I don't want you to want this. We stood there in silence, the weight of her decision suffocating us both. Finally, I broke the quiet. Maybe you should just do it without telling me, I said bitterly. At least then I wouldn't have to live with the knowledge. I could never do that to you, she replied, reaching for my hand. Please, Tom, if you love me, don't make me do this behind your back. It's not me making you do anything, Amelia, I said, pulling my hand away. It's you. You're the one tearing us apart. A week passed, but the tension lingered. Amelia treaded carefully around me, her every word and gesture calculated. I tried to block it out, to pretend nothing was wrong. But I knew it was only a matter of time before the dam broke. One morning over breakfast, she finally said it. I've been talking to someone, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I looked up sharply. Who? She hesitated. Another man. My heart dropped. Who, Amelia? Just tell me. Dave, she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. Do you remember him? From the party. My stomach turned. Not him. Anyone but him. Not Dave. I pleaded. Please, Amelia. Not him. Why not? She asked, her voice trembling. He's handsome. And kind. And I. And you what? I snapped, my voice rising. You like him? You think he'll give you something I can't? Her silence spoke volumes. And for the first time, I felt the ground beneath me give way. I didn't like him at all. I muttered, clutching at any excuse, any ground to stand on. Dave. That guy. I can't stand him. It's not necessary for you to like him, Tom, Amelia replied, her tone suddenly sharper, more energetic. You don't even have to meet him. Just agree and let it be over with, darling. I couldn't take it anymore, the thought of another man being with my wife, touching her, being in her life in a way only I was supposed to be. Amelia, I said, my voice rising, I can't. Don't you see what you're asking me? This isn't something I can just agree to. The argument spiraled, the foundation of our relationship cracking beneath the weight of words we couldn't take back. A few days later, Amelia asked to talk again. She seemed resolute, more confident than before, as if the fight had made her even surer of herself. That promise you gave me, Tom, she began, her voice steady but her eyes wet with tears. When you said it, I believed it. I truly did. That night before the wedding, it meant the world to me. It made me feel loved, like you trusted me completely. I felt the knot inside me tighten further, and all I could manage was a shrug. I don't remember that promise. I lied again, though the truth burned inside me. Yes, you do, she said quietly, the tears finally falling. I don't want to hurt you, Tom. But this desire, this need, it's been building for years. And now it's too strong to ignore. Why now? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. Why, after everything we've built together, our kids, our life, everything, why does this matter to you now? She wiped at her tears, her expression softening as she tried to explain. For years, I've listened to other women at work, married women, talking about the men they've been with. Some have been with several men, even after getting married. I'd never do that behind your back. That would be betrayal. But it made me think about the promise you gave me. I thought it meant I didn't have to bury those feelings forever. So it's okay for you to cheat on me. I spat. But if I went to another woman, you'd leave me in an instant? That's different, she shouted, her tears now replaced by frustration. It's not the same. You don't understand. I don't understand? I bellowed, the anger boiling over. How can you expect me to understand this, Amelia? How do you think I'm supposed to feel when the woman I love is planning to be with someone else? It's madness. We kept shouting, the tension in the room like a live wire ready to snap. In a moment of blind rage, I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, the noise ringing through the house. Amelia stared at me, her eyes wide with shock and pain, before bursting into tears and running to her room. 20 minutes later, I heard the front door slam. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the ruined casserole I'd been trying to salvage, my mind spiraling. That's it, I muttered to myself. If she comes back with another guy, it's over. I'll demand a divorce. An hour later, the phone rang. I hesitated, my stomach churning, half convinced it was Amelia calling to taunt me about her new conquest. But the ringing didn't stop, so I finally picked it up. "Hello," I snapped. "Tom, it's Sophia." Her best friend's voice came through the line, calm but heavy. "What do you want?" I replied bitterly. "Amelia isn't here." "I know," Sophia said. "She's at my place. She's in a terrible state." "That's her fault, not mine," I muttered, though relief washed over me knowing she wasn't out with some stranger. "Perhaps," Sophia continued unfazed. "But I thought you should know she's here, not somewhere else." "Thanks," I murmured, my anger momentarily eclipsed by exhaustion. I hung up, trying to piece myself together. The next morning, the door opened, and Amelia and Sophia walked in. The air in the house was thick with tension as the three of us sat down. "Stop arguing," Sophia commanded, taking charge of the situation. "We're going to sort this out now, or not at all." Amelia spoke first, her tone measured but unwavering. "Tom, you're the only man I've ever been with. You must know how much that means to me. But I need to know what it's like to be with someone else. Just once. It won't change the way I feel about you." I sighed deeply, gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. "Amelia," I began, my voice hoarse. "I admit it, I made a promise. But I never imagined you'd actually ask me to follow through. The thought of another man touching you, of being with you, it makes me sick." Amelia's face hardened. "You're just obsessed," she retorted. "You can't bear the thought of someone else having what you think is your property." "That's enough," Sophia interrupted sharply. Amelia apologized to Tom for that remark. "He doesn't want my apology," Amelia muttered, crossing her arms. "Both of you need to stop this," Sophia snapped. "If you keep going like this, you might as well get a divorce." "Divorce?" Amelia gasped, leaping to her feet. "No, I don't want a divorce. I love Tom." "Then sit down and act like it," Sophia ordered. The room quieted, but the tension lingered. Finally, Sophia turned to me. "Tom, is there any way you can agree to this? Even just once?" "I can't imagine even once," I replied bitterly. "How do I know it'll only be once? What if it isn't enough for her?" Sophia turned to Amelia. "What if it isn't enough? Have you thought about that?" Amelia lowered her face into her hands, silent for a moment. Then, in a small voice, she replied, "It would just be for fun. No romantic dinners or long walks, just once." I stared at her, my heart breaking. "Amelia, how did we get here?" "Romance," I repeated, the word like acid on my tongue. "So it's a quick dinner, some groping in the parking lot, and then off to his place, right?" "No, Tom, not at all," Amelia cried, tears streaming down her face. I want a man to charm me, to make me feel something special. I don't want it rushed." "You've read too many damn magazine articles," I snapped, unable to hold back the bitterness. "That's unfair," Sophia cut in, her voice measured but firm. "Women don't think like men, Tom. If Amelia's going to do this, only once, it's her only chance. She wants it to be like a fairy tale. And then what?" I shot back angrily. "We just go back to the boring, old life we've built together. Is that it?" Sophia didn't flinch. "Is that your main problem, Tom?" she asked thoughtfully. "That Amelia might compare you to someone else? That she could discover someone better in bed than you?" Her words hit like a slap to the face because they were true. Not the only problem, of course, but a big one. A huge one. For any man. "It came to me," I whispered, more to myself than to them. "That's it, isn't it?" Sophia turned to Amelia, her tone calm but probing. "How would you feel, Amelia, if you experienced sensations you've never felt before? Could you forget them? Could you come back and be as happy with Tom as you were before?" I couldn't even process the question. The room spun as my stomach twisted. But before I could speak, Amelia exploded. "Now you're both attacking me," she yelled. jumping to her feet. You don't understand what I've been through. You don't know how much I need to know what it's like to be with another man. I thought you'd understand me, Sophia. I thought you were my friend. I am your friend, Amelia, Sophia protested, her voice rising. But I'm just trying. Shut up, Amelia screamed, cutting her off. Enough of this nonsense, I shouted, standing up so abruptly that the chair skidded back. My voice was louder than I'd ever heard it. Both women froze, their eyes wide as they stared at me. I had never reacted like this in all the years they had known me. I've made a decision, I said, forcing my voice to steady, though my hands shook. I won't back down, Tom, Amelia snarled. You promised. Yes, I said, meeting her gaze head-on. I did promise. The room was silent, the air so thick with tension it was suffocating. Sophia glanced between us nervously. We've always taught our children to keep their promises, I said slowly. So if this is so important to you, Amelia, I will keep mine. Both women stared at me, stunned into silence. Damn, Sophia muttered under her breath. Are you serious? Yes, I'm serious, I said, turning to Amelia. If you want to have fun with another man, go ahead. Enjoy yourself. Have a blast. You don't mind? Amelia asked cautiously, her confusion evident. Of course he minds, Sophia snapped before I could respond. He hates the very idea. Stop tormenting him. I said I'll allow it, I replied, ignoring Sophia. I promised you, didn't I? But why? Amelia asked, her voice breaking. Why would you suddenly agree? Because I remembered how much I love you, Amelia, I said, my voice trembling. Her face lit up, just for a moment. Do you really love me that much? She asked, her voice hopeful, tears running down her cheeks again. Enough to let me do this? Enough to forgive me? I promise to forgive you, I said carefully, choosing my words. But whether I will still love you after this, only time will tell. Her face fell, her hope crumbling. I don't understand, she whispered. I promise to forgive you, I repeated. But I never promised to continue loving you. No one can promise that. How could I know what I'll feel when you come back to me after sleeping with another man? Amelia flinched, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. I'll do it quickly, Tom, she said softly. Just once. I promise. Don't rush, I said evenly, surprising even myself. Take your time. Find the right guy. Maybe even Dave if you want. Start a real romance. Do whatever you need to do to get it out of your head. She stared at me, her face contorted with an unfamiliar expression. You don't care at all, do you? She said, her voice shaking. I didn't say I don't care. I corrected her, my tone sharp. I said I'd forgive you, but I don't want to know anything about it. Not who it is, not where you meet, not how much fun you have. Nothing. Just tell me when it's over, and we'll see if there's anything left between us. I'll still love you, Tom, she exclaimed desperately. You're the only man I'll ever love. You don't know that, I replied sadly. None of us knows how we'll feel. With that, I stood, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. Where are you going? She called after me, panic in her voice. To get the kids, I said without looking back. You'll have the evening to call him if you want. Amelia collapsed into her chair, staring blankly at the wall. Sophia jumped up and grabbed my arm as I was leaving. You're either a heartless idiot or a damn genius, Tom, she blurted out. Probably both, I muttered grimly, pulling away. I just hope this works. The days that followed were excruciating. We pretended nothing had changed, but everything had. The silence between us was unbearable, worse than any shouting match. On Thursday evening, as she chopped vegetables, Amelia finally broke the silence. I'm going somewhere tomorrow evening, she said flatly. Great. Have fun, I replied, not looking up. Don't you want to know where I'm going? She demanded. Not really, I said, meeting her gaze. Unless it's something I need to know about. She said nothing and walked out of the room. The next evening, when I came home, the table was set, a bottle of wine standing at the center like a mocking centerpiece. Amelia descended the stairs, and I had to admit, she looked beautiful. Too beautiful. Hello, dear, she said quietly. I left out some wine. It'll do, I muttered, turning away. Then, I'll go. she said softly, lingering for a moment. I'll be back by midnight. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked, making one final attempt. I have to, Tom, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But don't worry. I'm not planning to go too far. I just want to see how comfortable I feel dating another man. And should that reassure me? I snapped, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the silence. Amelia stepped toward me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She leaned in to kiss me goodbye, but I turned my head away. Save your kisses for your lover, I said coldly. She froze, startled before lowering her gaze. Without a word, she turned and walked toward the door. I sat motionless, the sound of her heels against the floor echoing in my ears. Enjoy yourself, I called after her sarcastically, hating the venom in my own voice but unable to stop it. The door clicked shut, and I was alone, sitting there in the quiet. I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. I wondered how we had gotten to this place, what I had done wrong. I knew I'd forgive her, at least on the surface. Ide promisa, Annie. But deep down, I couldn't. What awaited us now? A quick divorce? A slow, miserable descent into marital hell? I didn't know. All I knew was that the love of my life was walking out the door to find something she felt she needed but couldn't get from me. And then there was Dave. I clenched my fists, the thought of him sparking a simmering rage in my chest. He'd pay for this somehow. And Amelia? Probably nothing. I'd simply vanish from her life one day. I still loved her and our children more than anything, but I couldn't imagine staying here, pretending this never happened. How had life become so cruel? Lost in thought, I sat there, staring at nothing, until the faint sound of the front door closing snapped me back to reality. She'd left. That was it. She'd gone out on her date. I let out a long, shaky breath and ran a hand through my hair, trying to prepare myself for what would come next. But then, to my surprise, the door to the living room creaked open. I turned, and there she was, standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. You did promise to forgive me, Tom. Amelia sobbed, her voice trembling. I did. I replied cautiously, completely puzzled as to why she hadn't left yet. Then forgive me, she said, her voice breaking, for being so foolish, so insensitive, and so heartless. Please, Tom, forgive me. I hesitated, unsure if this was real or just another twist in the night's torment. I think I could, I stammered. I couldn't do it, Tom, Amelia blurted out, stepping into the room. I opened the front door, but I physically couldn't step over the threshold. It hit me like a brick what I was about to do, to our marriage, to you, to everything we've built together. She took a shaky breath, her hands trembling. I don't want to be with another man, Tom. I can't believe what a fool I've been. All I want is for you to love me. Please tell me you still love me. More than ever, I said, standing up and crossing the room to her. I wrapped her in my arms, holding her tightly as she sobbed against my chest. More than ever, my love. And do you forgive me? She whispered, looking up at me with red, tear-filled eyes. Completely, I said, without hesitation. I told you that night before our wedding that I'd love and adore you forever, and I meant it. She smiled weakly, leaning into me. Do you remember what else you promised me that night? She whispered playfully into my ear, her voice soft and warm. I chuckled, the tension lifting for the first time in days. That I'd be so good in bed that you'd never be tempted, I recalled. I remember, she said with a mischievous grin. Why don't you take me upstairs right now and keep that promise? I laughed, finally feeling the weight lift from my chest. I thought you'd never ask, I replied, taking her hand. We walked up the stairs together, hand in hand, ready to leave the past behind. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I believed we could start over, that we could rebuild. Amelia and I were about to begin the first day of the rest of our lives, and for the first time in weeks, everything felt right again in our home. Thank you, God, I thought, pausing briefly on the landing. Then I laughed softly to myself. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to believe in him, was I?